All right, how is everybody? I kind of can see. Are we all here? Yes, okay, good. Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Miko Yok. And so today I'm going to talk about what we're doing at Count. So it's a company that is based in London, and we're essentially building the world's most collaborative data tool. So if it could save someone's life, would you be able to find a way to shave 10 seconds off of the boot time? Now, this quote was used by Steve Jobs, and this story some of you may know. So back in the early 2000s, Steve Jobs was extremely unhappy with how long it was taking the Mac to boot. So back then, he reached out to Larry McKinnon, who was his lead developer for the Macintosh, and he said to him, you know, Larry, we need to cut down the booting time. Well, Larry was like, look, I have 10 million things to do. Like, this is not important, essentially. So in order to make impact, what Steve Jobs did next is he got on a whiteboard and he presented this slide. He wrote 10 seconds per day, which is the amount of time he wanted to shave off from the Mac, multiplied by 5 million Mac users, is equal to 50 million seconds per day. So he then told Larry, if you equate that, and he wrote this on the whiteboard, to 250 working days per year, which is equivalent to 300 million hours per year, that is the lifetime of 100 people. Needless to say, after he presented how much time the delay was actually causing, Larry not only went back and reduced 10 seconds, he reduced 28 seconds off at a time. Now, the reason why this is important is because the first thing that you realize is that Steve Jobs used a whiteboard. And so when whiteboards became popular for collaboration in the late 1990s, they essentially marked the end of linear decisions. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Jason Knapp. I know we have a lot of startups in here. Does anybody use design sprints? Anybody familiar with it? Yeah, right? So Jason Knapp himself said, we found that magic happens when we use big whiteboards to solve problems. Now, the fascinating thing about whiteboards is not just that they're for collaboration, but what's a little unknown fact is that the enterprise collaboration market is about $85.8 billion US dollars, okay? And it's growing. It's actually scheduled to double that within the next couple of years. But I think what is fueling this growth, besides our hybrid environment that we currently have, is that people know that they need to essentially collaborate to do great work. Okay? And so they're looking for creative spaces to do that and to make decisions. The problem that we see at Count, and how many of you in here have dashboards at work? Anybody have dashboards? Okay. So the problem that we see at Count and the problem that we're trying to solve is that we fundamentally feel that data is trapped in dashboards. If you have used a dashboard in your job, you know that when you look at a dashboard, you don't get answers, you get questions. Does anybody disagree with that statement? Right? It doesn't present decisions and answers. And so at Count, we are super passionate, essentially, about fixing that process. And so going back to the Steve Jobs story, you notice that besides, to make his point clear, he didn't just use a whiteboard, but he used data. So this is if you look on the slide, this is the current data-driven making process that we essentially are working to make better because we feel it's broken. So I don't know if it's my left or my right, but I'll say on this side of the slide, you essentially have the process where you have data analysts and you have your team that is creating these insights and they're putting them in dashboards and reports. On the other side, you have the consumers, right, who are consuming it, trying to make decisions. The problem is these two processes are completely separate. So at Count, we fundamentally believe that the data-driven decision-making process is broken. And so our mission at Count and what we're currently building is we believe that data should be at the heart of every conversation. And so what I present to you today, which is fascinating, is what we call our Count Canvas, which is essentially a whiteboard for data. And so it was built for data analysts by data analysts. So if any of you in here, does anybody here use Slack or not Slack, Firo, Figma, or Miro? Anybody use whiteboards at work, I assume? Online, Zoom whiteboard, Microsoft whiteboard. So essentially what we've done is realizing this gap is we've created what we call the Count Canvas, which is a whiteboard for data that essentially gives teams the ability to collaborate together in real time with real data. So instead of going through the arduous process of first collecting the data, analyzing the data, taking the data, putting it into a dashboard, and then we know what happens with the dashboard, right? It gets screenshot and put into a PowerPoint. Everybody agree with that? It doesn't even stay there. What we are building and what we're working with our customers to build is a more inclusive conversation where not only you have the analysts and the stakeholders, but you also have the data right there in front of you. So, with that said, I invite you guys to join us, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. I put my contact up here. I'm essentially Miko Yuk Online, and you guys can find me on LinkedIn, but you guys can definitely visit count.co. We have our private beta, so if you guys want to check out the tool, we have a free trial. Feel free to join in. All right, thank you.